Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right. The way Hot Topics works is our hosts bring you hot topics they want to share. We'll ask, is it truth, lies, or shenanigans? And our panel will talk about it for a bit until time is up. Just for Lizzie, we brought back
Oh,
Gingy.
Gingy's back. Go, Gingy.
Thank you. What's
And,
up, girl?
Go, Gingy.
and then we'll go to our audience for comments and questions. So make sure you're commenting in any of our commenting threads. You're listening. All right, since we're coming off some fun partying, I'm going to save the more graphic discussions for last. So, Gianni Storm, you wanted to talk about the southern border. Is this truth, lies, or is this shenanigans?
Both truth and some shenanigans happening. The LA Times posted an article that explains there's a large backlog of asylum cases from unaccompanied children at the US border. So nearly 300,000 children still have cases pending from 2014. The Border Patrol has 5,381 migrant youth in custody, and 13,359 more were in federal shelters as of this past Thursday. The increase in youth has overwhelmed the Border Patrol, which faces shortages of buses, holding area, and beds. With 500 or more unaccompanied children arriving in the United States, every day, and only 500 shelter beds available. So the Biden administration is struggling to provide, safe housing and food for the children that are staying there, as well as swiftly releasing the children to their family members. So many of the people are attempting. The reason why there's so many people that are actually trying to cross the border is it ranges from they have no choice but to flee their homes. A lot of the women are escaping like gender-based violence. The LGBT plus community in different areas are facing violence, and they're fleeing from persecution. And then children are also facing like gang violence and things like that. So that's why they're fleeing. So yeah, that's what's happening right now at our U.S. border. It's kind of really sad. If you guys want to check it out, like I said, it's the LA Times article, and you should definitely see the pictures to give you more of a concept of what's actually going on, because these are just numbers and it sounds crazy. But yeah, so my question to the panel is, what do you guys think they should do? What do you think should the Biden administration, if you can offer President Biden some advice right now, how should he handle it? I know we're not experts, but
Sure, we are. Robbie Rock.
Yeah, that's a complex issue, Johnny, because I mean the root issues stem in their home countries. When I read the article that you shared with us to set up the story, what I found heartbreaking was that a 10-year-old child undertook a 1,450-mile trek for the promise of something better. And there's no promise, it's just the idea of something better. And this kid at age 10 basically just lumped into larger packs of kids, blended himself into different families. And now it's turning into a humanitarian crisis at the border. I think it's going to require, instead of building these amazing wall partitions section by section, I think those same building materials or the same financial investment could be used to develop temporary shelters, some triage centers, because unfortunately these kids are stuck at the border, and to refuse them is unconscionable. So you need a mechanism by which you can integrate them safely and responsibly into American society. And if the U.S. isn't the correct fit for their immigration needs, then work with other countries so that they can be displaced to a first world country that would benefit them, because that's what they've left their home base because of a lack of opportunity, for fear. So I think that the developed world, the developed nations can absolutely take care of these people, and it would be an international effort more than just a UA's best effort.
Lizzie.
Like
No, Gianni, were you saying something before I start?
no, I was just saying that I like Rob's perspective. That was good advice.
One, I'm going to call out the Mexican government because obviously this, like Rob alluded to, this is a situation that has started, that was birthed in Mexico. And it seems that there is some type of depraved indifference with the Mexican government, with officials there, in terms of taking care of its own and just, relying on the fact that, okay, we have this border. It's not that open, but it's not closed either. So we have this border where people can just go and they can automatically get asylum, or they're no longer our problem. So let them go. They can go over there and they can be the problem of the United States of America. So I think the Mexican government really needs to, like, why is the expectation that our government is going to care more than the Mexican government? So the president of Mexico, the government officials in Mexico need to get serious about this as well, because these are their people. These are their people. And if we don't
and Honduras was a popular one too. Honduras.
Well,
but there's a problem with Mexico because Mexico has similar issues to the places they're leaving. So they're going from one fire to another. And so that's why they're looking to come into the United States.
Exactly, but they're going through Mexico. And so why isn't Mexico addressing that? That's my point.
I mean, what can they do?
What can we do? We can't.
There's a lot we can do. But what can Mexico do?
But we're not. If you think about what's happening here in this country, we're not even taking care of our own homeless, our own displaced. Like I walk, you go to certain areas of DC and it looks like a third world country.
Yep.
And so I'm not saying that we should turn them away. Absolutely not. No. Absolutely not. But I think we have to be realistic here. Like we are being asked to take on this huge burden when we haven't even fixed stuff in our own house yet. And where the countries that these people are coming from aren't doing anything to address the issues there. And you're right, Gianni. It's not just I misspoke when I alluded to the fact that these were just Mexican, citizens coming here. It's a lot of citizens from Latin America.
Yes.
However, those countries are not addressing these issues and are expecting us to be the savior, and that's not fair to us at all. Especially when we can't even, or we won't even, save our own people. So if we're going to, talk about what can be done, we need to have a full conversation with all countries and their governments involved. Like, don't just put this on us. Because I guarantee you, what are they going to do if a whole bunch of Americans start flooding their borders? Yeah. You think that they're going to be as nice or as welcoming?
In order for that to work, Liz, the U.S. needs to play. But the U.S. needs to be playing it both ways, because during the Syrian crisis, Trump's administration was turning away Syrians, did not want anything to do with it.
We're going to have to consider Trump a blip. I'm sorry.
No. But at that point, it was just American policy. So, I mean, if it has to be carefully managed both ways, you have to be able to take them in, and but it's an international effort again. You need to be able to take in some from other parts of the world and divest it so that everyone has equal opportunity.
I agree, but also we need to take into consideration that this administration just took over. Like, we're dealing with a new administration. We're dealing with a new mindset, a new policy. Like, I think, when Biden took office, everyone just assumed that all of these problems were going to be fixed overnight, and they're not. And so, honestly, I don't even think he really realized when he came how bad and urgent the situation is.
I agree.
But I get kind of annoyed when all of the burden is put on us. Because I think other people need to step up too. Like, we don't have the capability to be the only country over here that is taking on all of this.
So the crisis
everyone else needs to do their part. everyone needs to do their part.
I agree with you. The crisis we have right now happened because of Trump. I mean, because there was a large number of people that avoided coming to the border because of Trump. And so when Trump came out, all of a sudden people were like, let's go. So they've been sitting around waiting in Mexico, waiting in other countries, waiting to come up. Now, the problem's
That's
been there
that's,
for a long
that's
time.
not that's not altogether true. There's been issues with the border for years.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah, yeah. No,
issues
no,
with the
no.
border.
I'm not saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying there wasn't an issue with the border. What I'm saying is
That's what you just said.
no. What I've said was the sudden increase. Like when we're talking about, all of a sudden they just started jamming the borders because they've been waiting. Is what I'm saying. So we're seeing more migrants than we've seen in the last 3 years or so because they knew there was a time when, because Trump was um, so hard on the borders that they were, you know, separating people, killing some people, not killing them, but allowing them to die. So what I'm
So
saying
yes,
is the massive in the last 3 months or 4 months that he's been in office.
the
Didn't you
problem
get
has
that?
exacerbated,
Right.
yes, but there was still always a problem.
I'm not saying there
That
isn't.
that
I never
no,
stated there
I'm
wasn't.
saying, but I'm saying that's my point. There
No,
still
I
was
get
always a
that point.
problem that was never addressed.
No,
That
no,
was
I
never
get that point. I was making a
Mhm.
different. I was saying that the sudden surge has to do with Trump. That's what I'm saying. I'm not. I wasn't countering your point. But to that
It's been
to your
backlogged
point,
since he's been in
I
office. Yeah,
agree
that's
that
true.
there needs to be some type of cooperation. And I actually loved the concept that Biden was considering of sending a lot of the migrants to the border states of Canada. You know, that doesn't mean that he's sending them to Canada, but he, he's creating a situation where Canada could possibly take in some of these migrants. And I like that idea. I wish
it's
Canada would step up and just say, hey, we'll take some of your migrants and call it a day. But if that's not going to be the case, I would like to see some of these border, because there is a problem at when a large number of people suddenly come into an area at the border, it does put pressure on resources. We're talking
Mhm.
about hospitals, when we're talking about fire, police, etc. It does put a pressure on that because you know you're expecting a certain, you're budgeting for a certain number of people, certain community, and then all of a sudden when a bunch of people come, it puts a lot of pressure. So it would help to alleviate the pressure to spread out and send some of the migrants to some other places. And we should have a better tracking system for sure.
Jeanette
it,
Brown shared a comment that actually kind of encapsulates what you were saying. It's fluid dynamics. So there was a bottleneck that was created with Trump and border closures, and it created a huge backup. So now that you have someone who's less tyrannical, less emotional in office, someone who's a little bit more lucid and logical, then people feel safer making that challenge for the border to gain entry because of the different political climate.
Yeah.
let me ask you this, Rob. Do you think the Canadian option is? I just don't see that as like I think like yeah, maybe Canada should help, but the reason why they're coming to across the border and mainly staying in the southern states, mainly staying in the Gulf states, is because of access. How are these people going to get to Canada?
Oh, they were going to fly them. They were going to put
Well,
them in
Ooh,
that's what
planes.
Neil was saying.
Biden administration
If
suggested
Biden
that.
is moving them to northern border states, then that creates at least an
Like,
For
environment
processing.
of,
how?
for process and possibly immigrating further north. Because if the opportunity isn't there, then if we make it a little bit easier as far as a North American coalition, if you will, then I think that we have the resources and the infrastructure available to help many of these people come and become contributing members of our societies.
I think in a perfect world that would be a great option, but we can't even keep track of the people that are staying in the Gulf
Mhm.
states.
Yeah, that's why I said that's
I
what
think
I
that
said.
I think that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to slip by the wayside. There are going to be a lot of children that are lost, which is already happening. And
Yeah.
so to think that we, would have the the wherewithal to safely get a bunch of people consistently to Canada. I don't trust our government to be, ready for that yet at all.
All right, let's get to these comments.
Maybe down the road, but I don't I don't
And a lot
see
of
that at all
people from
because
Latin American countries don't go too much further because of the language barrier also, because their first language is Spanish, and they stay in Spanish speaking communities in areas where they can communicate. And until they actually pick up English as a second language, then it does put them at a disadvantage.
are there Spanish speaking communities, like big Spanish speaking community, large Spanish speaking communities in cities in Canada?
We're a melting pot. I do know a fair amount of people who do speak Spanish, and that's even just in my northern town. It's I would imagine that once we get into metropolitan centers, that it wouldn't be very difficult because there are a lot of Spanish-speaking nationalities out there.
Are there areas though that like there are certain cities in the
Like
United States, even
communities.
certain parts of DC, where you go where you won't hear English at all, where all of the advertising and business is in the Spanish
Hispanic.
language, especially in Miami, especially in parts of Texas. Like, are there places like that
Sure.
in parts of Canada where these people would feel comfortable?
I didn't research it, but I'm sure that there are, because I mean, we have Little Italy, we have Little China, we have these areas. So I know London, Ontario, when I was living there, had a strong Portuguese population. So I'm sure that in different communities, that's how it sets up. I know Sudbury has a strong Greek population because the families come and set up, and then it becomes just a base for the rest of them to come and migrate to. So, but to say that I've known a little Spain, a little Madrid, no, I haven't encountered that in Canada yet.
Another thing that I think makes this more difficult, obviously, is the pandemic. Because how are we treating these people and trying to keep them safe from the coronavirus? Are we making the vaccines available to them? Which, politicians are going to say no. They're lucky just to be here. So that's another caveat to the situation is, how are we going to provide for these people so that they are protected medically, that their health is protected, so that they are able to travel to Canada? Because, I mean, again, Canada won't even let Americans in at this point still.
Canada's not letting anybody in right now, but I mean,
so,
it would have to be a long-term solution, I would think. It wouldn't have. I don't think there's a quick fix, but it'd definitely be a nice long-term solution. There's a bunch of comments online. Mike Winter says, "Oh my God, I actually agree with something Neo said. Rare."
A broke clock is
Rare
right
moment.
twice a day. A broken clock is right twice a day.
Jacqueline Robinson says, "Unfortunately, there is a caste system in Mexico based on skin color and class." Ephraim says, "This is a worldwide problem in developing countries. People live in rural areas and cities are overpopulated. Solution is to create employment." Daria Winner had a thread going. That there must be an international solution through the UN. We still have to deal with DACA. Dropping children over the border or wall is not a solution. How are the children going to become contributing members of society? We cannot play chess with little children.
The UN situation, the problem with the UN is that we just came out of an administration that had absolutely no respect for the UN at all. And so now we have to go back and try to build up that relationship, build the trust again.
So one last comment. Jeanette Brown says, "In some ways, parts of French-speaking Canada could be easier to assimilate into for Spanish speakers."
They are Latin-based tongues. There are some similarities, so I can absolutely appreciate where it would be easier to assimilate if you have those root words to use as a base to become part of that fabric.
Yanni, before we shut this down, did you have any more comments on that?
No, I think that you guys covered it pretty well. There, like Lizzie said, in a perfect world, things could happen streamlined or just smoother. But I propose a different solution, I think that maybe there can be like refugee camp in those countries, like in Honduras. I know that's kind of like, well, why would they're leaving the country? Well, maybe it's a different part of the country, and there's like maybe some type of United Nation base where these kids can come and be a refuge in their own country, and then I don't know, until their government gets things worked out, where they don't have to actually cross the border and be into different places. They can maybe stay with their families there. But that's an idealistic
Now, I
brainstorm.
just want to say, I know I haven't researched this, so don't take this as gospel, but I've heard that the U.S. Uh, gives a lot of money to many of these countries to try to handle their situation locally. Um, but of course, there's a lot of corruption in many of these countries,
I was
so
going
the
to say, but
money
we're
doesn't
talking
go
about corrupt governments. We're
right.
talking about corrupt governments.
So a
So
lot of the
the
money doesn't
people in
go to
need
them.
don't really see that money.
Yep.
I think a good example would be Brazil. When Brazil had the Olympics in Rio a few years ago, you know, Brazil has a very large population that's living below the poverty line, below the poverty level. And the government there isn't really taking any steps to fix that situation. However, when the Olympics came, what they did was they just swept all of those people to the side. They hid them.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it made it look
remember
like,
that.
you know,
It was
Brazil was this nice, happy place. And so I think that's what happens in a lot of these countries. You just talk, and we do
Yes.
that here. I'm not just going to call these countries out as we do that
we do.
here.
We
We,
do.
sweep the people off the street, and keep it moving. So again, I think these politicians need to get really serious. These are human lives we're talking about. And everyone needs to get really serious about what we are going to do, because America can't be the only
Can't be.
country
It needs to be.
that is acting on this.
I
And even if we bring Canada in, we can't be the only two countries that are acting on this.
agree.
Truth, lies, shenanigans.
All right, Lizzie.